Rowan is here just I'm leaning against the side of the wall there, just working the camera. He's come in. There was also Ben that you might have seen pop in earlier. He can't stay, he's on call. His wife is about to have twins. So she's about to go at any moment, so he said, I'll die, my wife will kill me if I stay here instead of at home tonight. So we've got, so Robert's going to go through the new location, but before we go through that, we've got a little bit of an agenda here tonight. So the next 2 hours, we're going to have to keep the pace up a little bit, thank you. So Rowan will be going through the location after I finish up here. First, after Rowan speaks about the location will probably go for about an hour and a half, depending on how many questions there are. We'll have a questions and answer session after that as well. Shane's going to go through, because the price point of this new location, and it's what we found was with the Hunter's going up in value. We had, for example, Jeremy Gasper. That was really interesting because he had a full experience of 12 months in the Hunter Valley, and he bought a property in the Hunter at the start of the year. He just attended our last workshop, which was in November last year. So he had pretty much close to a good solid 11 months experience there, and he probably went up $90,000. Now, he was a little bit sceptical at the very start as well. So, and that's one of the concerns that I've had with some clients. Now, there are people in this room, right, as we sit right now, who bought a couple of properties, who bought 2 properties, Netra's bought a property here, but there's a few people in the room that have not bought property. And to some degree, I feel like I'm failing. I feel like my business is failing in a way if you're not building a property portfolio. And so what I'd like to do is just go through the notions of some of the reasons why, because I know that some people just can't afford to buy property. One of the reasons why we brought on this new location is because the Hunter has achieved growth over the timeframes that we've been focused on the Hunter region. And there's hot spots and not spots in the Hunter as well. It's a place where you do want to be in, but there's places that you don't want to be in as well. So that location has gone from 400,000 or 380,000. Now the base price is 450,000. So the range is 450 to 550,000. People are coming and attending our workshops and saying, well, Steve, I can't afford to get finance for 450,000, but I want to buy. I can't even do a joint venture with you. I can't do it. So, and that's just because their finance situation just won't allow it. What people, even those qualified people in an intro environment, in this intro seminar, and I used to say, unless you've got this income and this deposit and all those sorts of things which you guys will experience, what people think they're in, by the time they hand over all their documentation over to finance, it's a totally different picture altogether. So we said, okay, we need to find another location that's in a price point of, say, 350,000 or 450. Where's the #1 location in the whole of Australia? That's what you're going to see here tonight. And then the next best location between 450 to 550, it's still the Hunter. There is no other location across the whole of Australia that beats it with what's coming. One of the problems that I find is that some people get caught up in just the small little bits and pieces. Oh, Steve, it's not giving enough rental return. Or Steve, there's a little bit of a saturation market here and there. And just totally lose focus on the big picture. And you're going to see a video that the ABC, it was a doctor in urban planning, did a video on Catalyst on the ABC just a couple of months ago. I'm going to play this video for you tonight. And when you see what's going on there, that shows you what's happening on a larger scale. And actually what they're talking about is connecting satellite cities, and what they're doing with the Hunters, creating a satellite city from the city, and you're going to get a bit of an idea on why they're doing it tonight, and that will paint the picture for a long term. Property is very much, when you're in a dynamic area, it's very much like the share market. It goes up and down, it gets, they all have their little peaks and troughs, but at the end of the day they're on a rising trend, and that's what you need to focus on. Get caught up on the day-to-day things, will do your head in life. Any business, any share trading, or any form of property analysis whatsoever, and it stops you from doing those things. You've got to be very careful, because at the end of the day, you all should have made $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 at least in the last 12 months. And if you haven't, you've got to ask yourself why. Because if you didn't buy in the Hunter, that's what you would have experienced. So if you haven't done that, then you must have made it somewhere else. But if you didn't do anything, then that's a cost. So today, after we go through the location, we're going to go through calculations as well. Shane's going to come up, and we've done a whole lot of new marketing material and things like that. We're going to go through some calculations, because before the price considering on the 450 mark, we're going to work out what it will cost to the cent if you purchase a property at, say, 350,000 and moving forward in different price points in your situation, right, roughly. But then, if you like, Shane and I are more than happy after today is to sit down with you. Might be over the phone, obviously, it might be like a session over the phone, and go through and discuss your personal situation. We're more than happy to do that. You just have to pick up the phone and ask. You have to be a little bit proactive, but we're always there to do that at any time across the board, or answer any of your questions in regards to the property investing side of things. Now, after we do that, then we're going to go through the actual properties and location, and we're going to have a look at the stock list and see what's actually available, so you can match it all up with what Roland goes through in regards to this new location. Now, some of you haven't bought in the Hunter. I'm going to throw it out there, and I'd like to know why some of you didn't buy in the Hunter, because some things stop you. Now, I understand finance could be a situation which that prevents you, but now we've got a different location that's at a cheaper price point, which helps people go on board. Because if you didn't make good money in the last 12 months, and you don't do it again, then you're just going to simply miss out again. And when you see what's going to happen today, when we go through the location, also the dynamics, not only the dynamics of the location, but also what's happening on a larger scale, like what's happening on the ABC, what they're showing you, it'll just get to a point. If you don't buy anything we've got on our stock list, or what we show you, then where can you buy at the same price point? You won't end up buying anywhere, because these are the best locations that we can find compared to anywhere. So some of you didn't buy in the Hunter. Can I ask why? Some of you did, some of you didn't. Well, can I ask why? What are some of the reasons that held you back from buying?
We didn't know about it.
You didn't know about it? Okay.
I was looking for something in super, but not that. I didn't want.
Okay, so you're looking for something in the super?
No, I didn't want a unit. I wanted a house.
You wanted a house and land, but not an apartment?
Yeah.
Okay.
It seemed to be, that was one of the reasons.
Okay, is that still your reason now?
Yeah, and also I'm still got a bit of a question mark about buying a new property versus something that's a bit older. You get the sort of initial depreciation with a new property, whether I'm better off buying something.
Okay, so what you need done is you need someone to sit, we need to sit down with you and go through a proper analysis of your situation. Have a session with you. So, and that wouldn't just be a matter of Shane and I sitting down with you. That would also mean Xavier having a look at your financial situation, but then also you're having a bit of a chat to you and saying, okay, look, you've got this much in your super, and just analysing a little bit better to see what's best for you moving forward, and see and it all has to make sense to you, obviously, but something that could be obviously that's comfortable for you. Because like I hate apartments. I don't like apartments for many different reasons. But in saying that, if you don't have a choice but to step into an apartment, doing something is better than doing nothing at all as well. Is there any other reason? So what we'll do is I think it's time we have sat down and had a bit of a chat.
I think I lost the confidence in the whole scheme.
Yeah?
Yeah, after the seminar, the one-day one.
Yes.
After that I got the stock list, and I was more interested in the red pen planes. I sent a few emails out trying to arrange for me to and
Okay, so when did you attend the workshop? When was that?
in October.
In October, okay. So October.
The one here in Brisbane.
Yes.
Because it was more closer to I live in Brisbane. Instead of Hunter Valley, I thought of
Okay,
something in red
okay, because the new location, will also, well, actually, I might chat to you a little bit after that, because you might let the cat out of the bag a little bit if we go into too much detail. So, is that okay if we'll do an open question and answer afterwards, and then that way, because you experience something different to what the other clients have, and so it's new and fresh for some of the people.
I haven't bought down there, and I've had my eye on it for a while, but we've got a couple of other investments that we need to sort out first that are very negative.
Okay.
So,
All right, so that comes down to us having a little bit of a chat, and maybe just have a little, because sometimes it's hard for us to analyse what your other portfolio's like, because you know those locations better than I would. Some people buy properties in any suburb all over Australia, and I don't know them, and that's one of the things that works. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, let's have a chat a little bit after. Is there anything else you guys didn't know about it at all?
No, we didn't have to.
Okay. Well, I just want to highlight a couple of things. What we have is, there's in Sydney, I grew up in a place called Blacktown. Do you know the area of Blacktown in Sydney's western suburbs?
Yep.
I went two weeks ago. They've got this new estate, a place called Ashlar Golf Course, and they converted the golf course. So Blacktown, the price points out there, they're all skyrocketing out there, but they start up this new estate out there. Where our Shire Golf Course is, they're putting in 17 stages. They've sold out 2 stages already. They finally opened up the entry into that location. I went into the sales office, and I asked them, could I get a price point on what are you selling these properties for? And this is Australand. You've heard of Australand, right? So this is pretty much the estate here. There's 17 stages. They've sold out 2, and they're selling 2, 3, and 4 bedrooms. There's price ranges for each one of them, and the cheaper ones just have carports, and the ones that probably range about $40,000 or $50,000 more expensive have double garages. Just want to let you know that 4-bedroom houses in Blacktown, which is not the most desirable location, are selling for $890,000 now. And I said, are you price controlling the estate? And they said, well, we're governed by what the market says. I'm thinking to myself, you are governing the market. You're policing the whole thing. Nobody is as expensive as you. Now, you look at Parramatta, which is closer. There's just no new estates growing up out there because there's just no land. The land is just gone. And that's probably one of the things. They build communities, certain types of developers. You've got 3 bedrooms. So they're selling for 4 bedrooms from $720 to $890 for a double garage. 3 bedrooms from $625 to $715. 2 bedrooms. And there's no freestanding houses. There's no 4-bedroom houses. Like they're all duplexes, butted up next to each other. And that's what they're selling for $890,000. So that's where we're going. It's really interesting. Some of the problems that we have with valuation, I just want to highlight here. I've had a couple of valuations that came in the Hunter as well. So Heron Todd White, here's a property that got priced, I'll just stand back a little bit more, so it's not so good as it used to be. Lot 414, Undercliff Street in Cliffley. Heron Todd White, contract price $430,000. The valuation came in at $400,000. WPB Property Group in Newcastle. Their valuation came in $435,000. So $35,000 difference. One came in $5,000 over, one came in $30,000 under. Do you understand why that would happen? What would you think?
Particularly a bond.
Sorry?
Particularly a bond.
It all comes down to risk. And you can speak all night about how important risk is when a valuer goes out and values a property, but the nuts and bolts of it is, it all comes down to your personal situation. How much deposit you put in. If you put in 20% deposit, the odds on that property ever fluctuating 20%, it's never happened, ever. The odds on that happening, oh, I can never say never, but we just went through the biggest downturn the property market's ever seen in history. Of recorded, well, the properties have been recorded, and it wasn't that bad. And we've recouped, and property's gone through a boom since the GFC. So they look at it and say, if we sell a property within 60 to 90 days, the banks just say, we want it sold immediately. What price can we sell in this market? We will get an immediate sale. And that's what their job is. If they're too generous with their valuations, then it's not good for the bank. It increases risk for the bank. So if you put in 5%, valuations usually come in lower. The bigger the deposit you put in, the more favourable the valuation is because you've got a buffer there anyway. Here's another one. Contract price, $496. Here we've got API Property. They came in at $425,000, and now we've got Heron Todd White, where they came in lower at the other end, have come in over at $500,000. It could absolutely do your head in every time. And so they've got a 48-hour clock. If they can't do a valuation within 48 hours, they send off to another valuer. The bank does. So they need to commit to it. But they're only getting paid like $250, $300 per valuation. So it's all about volume for them. So what I'd like to do is, I'd just like to play this little video for you to give you an idea what's happening.
I've come here with urban researcher Dr. Julian Boliter for a bird's eye view of a city sprawling in all directions.
It's amazing to think that more than 100,000 people cross that bridge every single day, and that's just one direction.
Absolutely, and mostly in private cars, and this is something as our cities get more congested will become less and less viable.
Australia's population is projected to reach up to 70 million by the end of this century. The extra space we'll need to live like this is mind-boggling.
It means that we need to build a new Sydney every 10 years for the next 90 years.
That sounds impossible.
It does, it's a formidable challenge. It's taken us 200 years to build Sydney as we know it. We now need to build one of these every 10 years.
So what does that mean for a city like Sydney? Are we just going to see ever more increasing urban sprawl?
No, we actually can't. Sydney's pushing into national parks to the north and the south and to the Blue Mountains to the west. So in Sydney, the only way is up. All of these things you're talking about are eminently sensible. However, our argument is by about mid-century, really we can't just continue to grow our capital cities. Otherwise we'll end up with mega cities, which is a Sydney of 12 million, a Melbourne of 15 million. When that happens, our livability will begin to drop away. Congestion, pollution, affordability issues will mean that the quality of life those cities offers declines. We have no nationally coordinated plan for how we're going to grow. We are, as a nation, sleepwalking into this population growth. The highest level planning tends to be the capital cities, but we need to be thinking at a much larger scale if we're going to adequately deal with this kind of population growth. So we're missing a very large part of the picture.
So what's your solution?
So what we think is really important as the capital cities grow beyond mid-century is that we begin to think not so much in terms of mega cities, but mega regions. Essentially it means chains of smaller cities connected with very good public transport infrastructure. So we could conceive of a mega region running from Brisbane to Sydney through Canberra to Melbourne, which is bound together by a high-speed rail link, and those cities will have access to affordable land, and they'll also be able to be designed from the ground up around the principles of 21st century sustainability. High-speed rail can travel at about 350 kilometres an hour, so there's no city along this mega region that is further than 2 hours commute on a high-speed train from a capital city.
Decentralising the population means that each new city could be a small city.
It's our calculation that each of these new cities on the high-speed rail links would be around 800,000 people. So that's a significant expansion of the existing population.
And that's a very livable city.
It is a livable city. It offers the benefits of urbanity and city living, but not the disbenefits that you start to get when a city reaches mega city size, which is 10 million or more.
The idea of a high-speed rail in the east has been toyed with for years, but a report released earlier this year shows it could now be cheaper than initially thought. Run on 100% renewables, be built in 10 years, and would reduce transport emissions dramatically. Julian believes linked megaregions like these are the only way we can hope to accommodate a potential population of 70 million without destroying our environment.
Okay, high-speed rail, and to give you a bit of an idea, I'll link in with the from Newcastle all the way down to Sydney. There's a high-speed train that is pretty much they're upgrading all the rail, and that will all be completed by 2016. 2016, threefold increase by trains plus one speed train to cater for this. So whatever you get caught up in the little bits and pieces that happen on a day-to-day basis, don't, because it'll stop you from doing anything. At the end of the day, the big picture is this. The big picture, that place is going to double in size. Right? It's not going away. It's going to be a satellite city, the first of its kind in the whole of Australia, outside of a major city. And that is just simply not going away. Too much billions of dollars have been invested from the government to make this happen. And population is just going to keep on increasing. I spoke about that in the intro in regards to immigration. And that's just another example. That's a higher level once again, 70 million by the end of the century. What I'd like to do is invite Rowan up to the front so he can go into the new location and educate you all on there. And then after that we'll have a question and answer time. So Rowan, show of a quick round of applause for Rowan. And so Rowan's one of our researchers. He works alongside with Ben. They're based here in Queensland. And so if you have any questions about this location whatsoever, Rowan can answer it better than what I would be able to, because they're amongst it on a day-to-day basis, living it, eating and breathing it. So over to you.
It's interesting from a property economics point of view, and it really came, I think at Christmas I was talking to a mate who was in England, and he's drinking in a pub that is older than Australia. Right? And that's the concept as Australians, because we're so insular, you know, that we don't get. You know, so to say that we're going to have 70 million people within Australia as a population in the next century is a realistic, I suppose, forecast. And also you've got to remember, we're at 23 million people. So, you know, the compounding effect, you know, like 2 + 1 kids or 3 + 1 kids, or we're having another 3 + 1 kids, it will grow. And, you know, we studied economics and we studied property. So my job is really not to, you know, sell an area. My job is to find the next hotspot. And it's hard. It's getting harder because bottom line is population and specific growth of areas is really driving the spots. You know, so you know, Steve talks about Newcastle as an opportunity. You know, we've got to put it into a formula. Does that make sense? You know, because we've got to start looking at it like there's a propertyology, there's a science to it. It's not just waking up and thinking, oh, I'll invest in a property, you know, like we did 30 years ago and go to LJ Hooker at, I don't know, New Farm, you know, because that's probably about the suburb that was there. Buy a property and grow it. Because property is such a forgiving thing. And as investors, what you have to do is have to get into the mindset now and start thinking of it like a share. So, you know, as a company, you know, real estate investing teach you to fish, right? Yes, they give you an idea and show you the fish and sort of give you, you know, here's a concept, and you know, we'll pay Rowan and Ben to do research to try and find an area for you. But you can do it yourself. But I suppose you've got to rely on, you know, the education and the business that we have in doing that. It's like you don't wake up tomorrow and say, I'm going to buy shares, go to the stockbroker because the financial plan has taken you there and think, oh, I don't mind BHP because I like the logo. You know? And to be honest with you, it just amazes me that that's how people invest in property. And they wonder why they lose value and they don't get the growth that they're looking for. So, Australia's a big market. Right? You've all heard about the property clock, and you know, you can open up the Property Investor magazine and they'll say, well, you know, this is 12 o'clock, this is 6 o'clock, this is 8 o'clock, and this is wherever. As Steve said, the best time to buy real estate is when you can afford to buy it, right? Because it's not a get-rich-quick system, it's a process that takes a while. And it's something that the longer you hold it, the better you will be off. So who wishes they bought a property, you know, 40 years ago? You know, who wish they bought 10? You know, I moved up here 11 years ago and I could have bought 11 properties in Inala for under 100 grand. You know, and friends of mine have moved, because I've moved up here from Sydney, have said, oh, you know, not Inala, you know, like Nala, you know, yeah, I listen to them, but anyway. So over a period of time, there's a selection criteria, and probably in the last workshop you guys went through this, and they're like non-negotiables, you know. But if you break it down to really a few things, it's really what drives the market.
Supply and demand.
Drives price.
No price.
But what drives the market is really interest rates,
Yes.
right? And interest rates, it's an interesting thing at the moment. The Reserve Bank wants to drop interest rates, but they're scared of growing the market, right? Because they know that if they look at it, more people will enter the market and property prices will grow, which affects affordability. But it's inevitable it will happen, right? And the thing is that the next thing is what drives it is supply demand, because if more people hit the market, there's less property, right? So it's like bananas, you know, a market gets hit by a cyclone, they go, you know, they're more than petrol. You know, it's ridiculous. You know, the other thing is infrastructure. So that ABC video hits the nail on the head. So if you look at the 3 major capital cities of Australia, they're under an infrastructure plan. So Melbourne has the 2030 plan, and Brisbane has the 2026 South East Queensland plan. And then Sydney is really just working under a 2030 plan as well. But I suppose they're just trying to control growth because they're running out of land. So the concept of satellite cities is where it's happening. So, you know, we look at stable rental absorption, we look at government spending, we look at private spending, you know. Demographically, from the last census to the new census, has the average income increased? You know, that's a simple question. You know, serious town planning, is it, you know, working under a concept, or is it just driven by a resource? You know, so I've had friends and people say, oh, you should be investing in, you know, Moranbah, and we all went through that, and, you know, I'm going, don't do it. You know, this is 5 years ago. You know, so 2 years ago, a place in Moranbah was 850 grand, and it got 2 grand a week. Now it's probably worth 350 and you can't get a tenant. Because it's still, and Chinchilla's the same. You've got to look at safe investment. You know, you want to look at, don't try and speculate, just think about it as a buy and hold, and you'll be a lot better off. When it comes to cash flow issues like we've got to look at and use companies like real estate investing to diversify and look for an opportunity that gives you more cash flow to help support your portfolio. So, in saying that, the hotspot, or at the moment, is southeast Queensland. So you guys are all from Brisbane, so you understand the Brisbane market hasn't really gone that strong in probably the last 6 to 7 years. Right? Impacted by the floods, impacted by the Labor government, when they star me. Impacted by interest rates, everything impacted by the GFC. So today, Brisbane is the cheapest major city in Australia, outside of Adelaide. Okay? So if you look at it from a property clock, theoretically, it's at the bottom of the market or on a rising market. Right? So what we're finding is what drives our price is, for the first time in mortgage history, the investors are driving the market. So investors are becoming national. So traditionally a mortgage rate or a loan to an owner-occupier rate to an investor rate is usually about 70-30, 70% owner-occupiers. It's about 50-50 now if you look at MFAA. So my phone or the activity within Brisbane is people who are living in Sydney and Melbourne who are used to paying 890 grand for a 4-bedroom box in Blacktown, think, holy crap, for $450 I can get, I'll buy 2. Right? And that's because psychologically that's where they sit. Same as Melbourne, right? Why is something in Sydney 850 to 890 grand as a dog box? Is because they have to stay within a price point that is psychologically accepted to the market. So if they develop and put something on there for $1.5 billion, the average punter won't buy it. Right? So they've got to put it in the biggest market. So that's what we look for. We look for markets that are sub 450 to help, because psychologically that's where most people will play. You might go to a little bit higher depending on your borrowing capacity is 550. So if you take the emotion out of it, do I buy a unit in Queen Street, or do I buy a house and land package? So then it breaks down to all those questions. So if you look at it, we've currently got one of the strongest population growths in Australia. We're expected to be, the size of Melbourne, if not outgrow Melbourne. I'm pretty sure the Victorian people would say that's not going to happen. But, once you move here, you know how good it is. I think initially it was all Melbourne people anyway. I think that's why the Lions were so supportive. Fastest growth, and they're saying, HIA is saying there's 750,000 dwellings needed by 2031. So the trouble is we're in a low stock supply market because of the GFC, right? So most developers, when they get something, it takes a few years for a development to happen. They've got to get a DA, a BA, they've got to get funding, they've got to get pre-sales, and they've got to start. For the first 4 years after the GFC, they sat on their hands. So stock got churned up, so to speak, and it got used. So the easiest way to look at it is what I was talking about as the plan. So the 2026 plan really designed Brisbane, and Peter Beattie came up with the plan, and really he just looked at the development of growing opportunities or cities outside of the CBD. Does that make sense? Right? So plagiarism is the best form of flattery. And I don't think a politician has an original idea. So if you look at it, I think there you go. So if you look at and lay over Brisbane over Sydney, right? So 40 years ago, Sydney was in exactly the same position as what Brisbane was, probably about the same population or a bit bigger and growing. So they opened up this little satellite city called Parramatta. Right? They run a freeway out there. If you bought out there 40 years ago, people thought you were an idiot because you didn't really go that far for your holidays. Then they punched the M4 out and opened up a little satellite city called Penrith, to the point where the M4 at the top of the hills, Katoomba becomes a suburb of Sydney. They went north and they opened up Gosford. So Gosford, or the freeway to Gosford, they opened the northern beaches and the northern areas of Brisbane. So where now Gosford, people live and travel from Gosford and work in Brisbane. They went south and they opened up Liverpool. You know, they went northwest and they opened up areas like Blacktown, Kellyville, Rouse Hill, you know, out Windsor Road, right? And then they went southwest and they opened up areas like Narellan, Camden, to, you could nearly say Mittagong is a suburb of Sydney now, right? So if you look at Brisbane, you've got the CBD of Brisbane, okay? So if you go north, what have you got? What's the next largest satellite city? North Lakes. To the point of some people will say Caboolture, but Caboolture, like Gosford, we're sitting back here 30 years ago and saying the demographic kills it. Right? But it's a coastal, you know, it's, you know, I wish I bought in Gosford 30 years ago as well. You go south, what have you got? You've got Coomera, and then you've got the Gold Coast. You go west, what have you got? Ipswich, or I would say Springfield.
Yeah.
So Springfield is the Ipswich, but if you've got friends that are moving from Sydney to Brisbane and they say you're going to move to Ipswich, you'll go, oh, but if they go Springfield, you go, oh, that's nice. So, and then really you've got Toowoomba, right? So then you've got south, you've got Logan to the point of Bow Desert. So where is the government spending the money, or the most amount of money today? Springfield, without a doubt. You know, the trains running out there, right? They're talking about, you know, the Moreton Bay train coming through, but it's not even going through North Lakes, right? It's going to go through Mango Hill and come through Kipparingan and down through there, right? So out here you've got major infrastructure spend, right? And why are they pushing out here? No, 43% of the available industrial land for the southeast of Queensland is in Ipswich. Right? So employment. So what's the next? I call it Nappy Valley, right? But it's Ripley Valley. So Ripley Valley is where they're really trying to get affordability in there and get first home buyers and things like that. But the trouble is they're dealing with a Generation Y, right? So the only thing Generation Y makes for dinner is a reservation. And that's if they're kicked out of home. So they want to live in the city, they want to wear their black jeans, get Ned Kelly beards and put tattoos on their arms, right? But then what happens is they get pregnant, right? And they say, sorry, no, we're not living in New Farm or Nunda anymore. We're going out the burbs. So that's what Gen X did. So who wishes that they bought in Parramatta 30 years ago? I definitely do. So the thing with Parramatta is there's another little city called Blacktown, right? And I wish I bought there as well. So if you look at the Western Corridor, and if you look at all this land, right? So basically what's all this? National Park, right? So one thing under the plan is really they're making sure that they reserve national parks and green spaces, right? So we're limited in regards to land and all that sort of stuff. It's quite blurry, that one. Let's see. I need my glasses. So the Western Corridor is basically planned, the structure of it. If you look at it, it's the fastest growing region in Queensland at the moment. Its population is expected to double by 2026. Okay? The economy is really projected to $12.7 billion. It's the highest capital growth suburbs, or has the highest capital growth suburbs in Queensland. And really, what the government needs to do is this. So at the moment, affordability is the same as if you bought a house in 1982. Right? And people say, nah, you know, my kids can never afford to buy a house. You know, your parents probably said that about you, right? But dollar for dollar, it's the same affordability. The issue is, it's the entry into the market, right? Because interest rates are sub 5s. 1982, they were 13.9%. The hardest thing is to find a deposit. So banks and governments are going to have to start looking at first home buyer schemes. They're going to have to start looking at initiatives. You know, I heard the other day, if you're sub 30, you'll be able to get a 50-year loan, things like that, right? Because they need to do it. Otherwise, they're just going to have a generation of renters. So what I'm finding now is Gen Y is living in Nunda or living in the city, but they're investing for their future in growth opportunities or suburbs where they feel that they might move later. Right? So they'd rather pay the rent, put a couple of people in a 2-bedder, 3-bedder, and rent and buy an investment property out in the burbs. Right? So, the thing is this. So the federal government and the state government have committed to spend $18 billion in the area over the last 10 years. And that's documented. And I'm pretty sure there's a Terry Ryder report that Steve's sort of added all that up. It sort of shows all that. You guys will get a copy of that.
Yeah, get a copy tonight.
So if you look at it, one of the initiatives is Ambly. Right? So Ambly Air Force Base has basically become a sub, and they're putting an $860 million expansion into it. So what does that do? Creates employment, right? But it creates blue-collar and white-collar employment, so it also increases the disposable income of the area. Make sense? Right? Boeing is the anchor tenant. Right? So Boeing are going to develop Ambly or areas of Ambly to be the second largest aerotechnical division outside of Seattle, because they've been commissioned to develop and make sure that they can do the construction of Australia's military fleet. You know, you can't read it, but the Abbott government just signed off a $500 million to build 2 of these. 2. You know, it's incredible. The other thing is, you look at the initiative of Paul Pasali, you look at Paul Pasali, you look at, you know, he's one of probably the best mayors that I've ever come across. You know, the state government and everything. You know, they're approaching companies like GE. So GE have just built their national headquarters in Springfield Lakes, or Springfield Central. Springfield Lakes is the suburb. So let's not get it confused. You know, so, you know, they've got a better rate. You know, they're saying, you know, move your head office to here, it's better for your staff, it's a better lifestyle, all that sort of stuff. They're actively approaching major companies in Sydney and Melbourne to relocate their, you know, their businesses and make it worthwhile to them. You know, even to the point, so, you know, GE just happened to be able to basically buy the block next door, and they're going to build a $55 million office block that they'll be the landlords for. You know, I'm not saying anything happened there, but, you know, that's 1,200 employees that are going to be in that building, and that's just finished. Health City, so major hospital, Mater Hospital. So it's a private and public hospital under the same roof. Starting off at 80 beds, and this is happening now, right? This is not going to happen in the future, and this is happening in the 3rd largest capital city of Australia. And it's happening in the cheapest, or one of the cheapest capital cities of Australia. You know, it's not some little mining town. Stage 1, 80 beds, it's got approval for 1,200 beds, $85 million building, and it will be complete in 2016. I don't know
where will that be exactly?
That's in Springfield Central. I'll show you exactly on that. Right? The substation that they've built, because they call these areas in precincts, they've got Health City and Education City. So Health City, right, is where they're going to have all the pathology, the ambulance, everything related to health. And then the next one is Education City, where they have all the education. The federal government has committed a $21 million cancer care centre, so that's funded by the federal government. So that's oncology, that's fenced off, and they're doing the all the civils for that at the moment. The substation that they've built for this area is the size of an office block, specifically to drive that area. Right? So what's that do? Increases the average income, increases the employment opportunity, and changes the demographic. You know, we talk about areas like Ipswich and Springfield and those areas, very similar to like how people spoke about Parramatta 30 years ago. You know? And it's really trying to take that emotion out of it. So this is Education City. So this is the University of Southern Queensland. Stage 1 is done. There's 1,500 students there already. Stage 2 is basically approaching completion. And it's a $45 million capex. You know, it's a commitment to that area. You know, I think they started building the uni, and the second thing they built was a uni tavern. You know, so you know, but there's also a childcare centre in there. There's all that sort of stuff happening. The Orion Shopping Centre. So this is stage 2 of the Orion Shopping Centre. So this is under construction. This is going to make it the biggest shopping centre in Brisbane. Right? Bigger than Intrapilli, bigger than Chermside, bigger than Carindale. Right?
Bigger than the Westfield of North Lakes?
Bigger than the Westfield of North Lakes. Carindale. It's funny how, you know, like, I don't know, maybe I'm a bit sceptical, but you know, you mentioned these satellite cities, right? Why is there a Westfield in the centre of them all? Like, what do they know that we don't know? You know, or who's paying who? And ultimately, this stage 2 is going to have 9 picture theatres in it. Right? 2 Gold Class, 2 VMAX, and 5 normal theatres. It's got major anchor tenants like Target and Coles moving in there now. Construction's underway and will be completed this year. And it's huge. Right? So in the old days, when I was studying, they said if it had a Bunnings or a Macca's, that's property economics 101. Right? So up behind the Orion Shopping Centre is a Mega Masters. So it's 1,200 square metre super centre. It's got Macca's in it. You know? And then if you look at the surrounding areas, Supercheap's moved in, Barn, Pet Barn, Hog's Breath, you know, the 5 major food groups, KFC, Pizza Hut. I don't know who's on the top of the pyramid, but it's all there. So in the adjacent block, guess who bought next door? Bunnings. And they're building a 600 square metre because size matters. Right? So you've got to look at it and take my education out of it, take anyone's education out of it. These companies are multi-million-dollar, billion-dollar companies that have a responsibility to their shareholders. So they have to get a return on their investment. Do they put that capex in place if they don't believe in an area? Right? You know, so it's not just Springfield that they're believing in. They're believing in that whole Western corridor, right? And the opportunity for that area. So the other thing is, who knows where Brookwater is? So Brookwater is basically a medalist development. It's a Greg Norman owned company. Greg Norman designed golf course. It's probably, I'm not a big golfer, but it's probably, apparently it's one of the hardest golf courses around and the most respected golf courses in Queensland. Right? So what they've done is they've just approved a $500,000 golf resort to go next to that. And that's started construction. They've pegged that out now. Stage 1, stage 2. There's going to be restaurants in there, recreational areas, everything else to capture that tourist market. Right? So if you look at it, who would have expected a $500,000, 5.5-star resort to be between Bellbird Park and Redbank Plains. To be honest with you, God, I wish I had a crystal ball. But you do, you can look at it, you can look at where it's the largest foreign investment in Australia resort in the history of Australia. Right? So, as I said, 43% of the available industrial land is driven within that area. So Paul Pasal is pushing employment, he's not pushing residential growth, right? Because he knows if they build it, they'll come. You've got Springfield Central, right? You've got Swanbank Enterprise and Park, and you've got City Switch Business Park, just to mention a few, not to take into Carroll Park, Wacol, all those areas. You know, even if you go a little bit down Ipswich Road, I suppose there's opportunities within a close proximity to it. Redbank Plains, all those areas are just creating huge employment. So Swanbank is going to be the largest, basically, industrial park in Queensland. It's 2,200 hectares of master planned industrial area. There's going to be waste disposal, paper recycling, all that sort of stuff. Oh, by the way, in Springfield Central, I heard the other day that IKEA are looking to purchase a site, right? And I know that the Ipswich Council is approaching Costco to push for it. So Springfield, let's not get confused with Springfield Lakes, is at 20% of their development approval, right? They've been going for 15 years and they're at 20%. So only now they've hit basically the wave or the critical point from the population point to allow more capex to be spent. These have moved into here. CS Energy, Viola Australia, and Vizzy are supposed to be going in there soon too. City Switch, basically in its industrial park, it's on its way out, so we're on your way to Toowoomba. Masters are in there, One Steel, the Research Shop, Capral. So it's a little bit higher from an industrial point of view. It's not, basically making to light industry, so it's creating strong employment. $1 billion, 350 hectare industrial estate, largest in Queensland. And then you've got Springfield, right? So if you look at it, this is an architectural concept of Springfield, so that's a Centenary Highway coming in through here. There's the new train station which got finished last year. At the moment they're building this, which is a big South Bank style lagoon. Water features to go through here, which connects onto the other side, which is in place, so the uni's in here. So in there's a big piazza, big child parks, water features, family orientated. At the moment that's there. So that's a $350 million data centre. So it's basically got man traps in it, car traps. It holds a lot of the data for a lot of the major organisations throughout Australia. So I don't know, they would know your name and number in there. It'll be on some big computer. That's Miha Sinanami's Springfield Towers. Channel 9 have moved in as an anchor tenant in the bottom. GE own that site there and they've bought this site. That site's been sold. And then over here is the start of Health City, and it's a concept. Over here is all the designated land, so they just approved a DA for 1,000 units to be built in there. And then across, just over here is where the Lions have proposed to put their training facility and their new grandstand. There's talk about being a big club out there. So if you talk about the Lions, what's their drive to go out here? It's not the grandstand or playing football there, it's the club. Because what makes the money is poker machines. Right? So they need to be in an area with disposable incomes and have a population growth. So, if you look at Greater Springfield, within a 3.5k radius of it, it's really the growth corridor is what we call it. So, I talk about Springfield and Springfield Lakes. In my opinion, Springfield's done. Right? You should have bought there 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Same as North Lakes. North Lakes done. Right? But the trouble with North Lakes is there's no ripple effect, there's no other emerging suburbs. They're just tagging off it. There's nothing with the infrastructure that's being spent on it. So, this is a video from the Greater Springfield organisation to give you a bit of an idea of it. Sort of pulls it all together.
This is Greater Springfield, an internationally award-winning master plan city unlike any other, offering unique partnership and growth opportunities for investors within Australia's newest and most remarkable city. Be part of the future now. Queensland's economy is doing well and has a strong future, driven in particular by the steady demand for the state's natural resources, tourism and more. A lifestyle, the envy of the world. Nowhere is this growth more evident than in the southeast corner of Queensland, where the population continues to swell at unprecedented levels. And right in the geographical centre of the region lies Greater Springfield. Greater Springfield is located in the 4th fastest growing region in the country. In size, it represents an area larger than Melbourne's wider CBD, or even that of inner Sydney, Australia's biggest city. Another comparison is that Greater Springfield is becoming to Brisbane as Parramatta is to Sydney, a thriving satellite city in itself, without the distance. And it is already streets ahead of others. Springfield Central, the exciting CBD of Greater Springfield, is becoming one of southeast Queensland's most attractive new business addresses, and is already quickly growing in demand. Planned for massive future growth, with an area of 390 hectares, already major national and international businesses call it home or are about to move here.
Ash McGrath comes in, it's on its way, it's there! The miracle occurs! The Brisbane Lions!
Springfield Central already houses one of Australia's most advanced buildings. The Polaris Data Centre is the backbone of the city's information communications technology infrastructure, with its own dark fibre network connection to Brisbane and to the world. In the heart of Springfield Central is the multiple award-winning $30 million Rebel Domain Parklands, providing a recreational hub with the latest sound, lighting and technology infrastructure. Stage 2, with its expanded water park, is under construction. Greater Springfield has been master planned from its inception. With its growing population, outstanding opportunities in the areas of commercial, retail, education and health continue to welcome investors and developers to this magnificent city in the making. Already home to more than 26,000 people, by 2030, the city's equivalent population is expected to be 105,000 or more. More than 1 million people live currently within a 22-minute drive, and that population is growing every day. And there are 1.2 million people within a 32-minute drive. Greater Springfield has already created over 6,000 jobs, with thousands more to come. The newly upgraded freeway improves links to Brisbane and beyond. And with no traffic lights between Springfield and the airport, the gateway to domestic and international travel could be easier. The $1.2 billion Springfield Rail Link has changed the face of commuting, widening the access to Greater Springfield and opening the area to future investment. Carrying 89,000 passengers in its first 2 months alone, the train line to Springfield Central, with its state-of-the-art transport hub, offers a holistic mix of commercial, residential, retail and service opportunities. Education and health are critical pillars of any intelligent, modern and master planned city. Greater Springfield already has more than 10 schools, with more planned. There are a mix of private and state schools, both primary and secondary, as well as the University of Southern Queensland and technical and further education facilities. More than 12,000 students already study in Greater Springfield's many educational establishments. Stage 1 of the 50-hectare Health City precinct is currently under construction and will provide all forms of healthcare built around a planned and approved 1,200-bed hospital. This will make Greater Springfield a regional hub for health services delivery in the rapidly growing Western Corridor. Retail is also integral to Greater Springfield, with Orion's 6-star Green Star rating making it one of the world's most environmentally sustainable shopping centres. About 36,000 square metres of the 172,000 square metres approved has already been developed. The remainder, including the region's largest cinema complex, is part of a $154 million extension targeted for completion in 2015. Greater Springfield boasts a great range of residential options, from upcoming studio apartments to townhouses, and ultimately luxury resort-style properties fronting our great Norman-designed Brookwater Golf Course, ranked #1 in Queensland. 855 hectares, 1/3 of Greater Springfield, is dedicated to open space and nature corridors for residents and workers to enjoy. Greater Springfield has won numerous state and national awards, and in 2010 was globally acknowledged by the International Real Estate Federation, achieving the ultimate accolade of the world's best master plan community. Now, Greater Springfield invites you to become part of this visionary project, with an opportunity to create around 1 million square metres of development. For business, health, education, transit-oriented development, residential, Greater Springfield, the emerging new city, where business, education, health and lifestyle interact seamlessly, connected by the latest technology. A destination brimming with opportunity, right in the middle of Australia's growth zone. Greater Springfield, a city that really is planned for greatness.
It's good, eh? So the goal is to have people working and living in their area. So, you know, ideally, as I said, they looked at Canberra. Who's been to Canberra? You can go into the centre of Canberra. It's not really even a city. You know, most people live and work outside of the city, so it's planned. So that's basically, as you see, Springfield now. As I said, it's at 20% of its DA approval. Bunnings have bought that. Park Avenue, there's over here is where they've allocated and they've signed off on the unit development or high-rise unit development. I can say that here, but to be totally honest with you, I wouldn't buy a unit in Springfield. You know, in 20 years' time or 30 years' time, I probably think I could have bought a unit in there for 380 grand, but it just doesn't fit the trend. Right? So the trend is families. So they won't like me saying this. But, you know, it's a cheaper alternative for accommodation. So go from there. So as you can see, it's pretty exciting and a growth area. So the opportunity is the neighbouring suburbs. So everyone write down ECB, right? So it's the established capital benchmark, right? So, you know, we all look at it and say, okay, well, we're taught not to buy the most expensive house in the street, right? Because you set the ECB. Okay, so what's happening for the Western Corridor, and as I said before, I think Springfield is done. You know, it'll plateau out a little bit, the developers will dry up supply, but the price point will come. So at the moment, the median or the average price to get in Springfield Lakes or Springfield is really anywhere from about 410 grand, if you're lucky, up to, I'd say, 650k for a really nice house on that package. Right. If it's down this end, it's a small block, it's a 3-bedroom. You know, they're selling townhouses, 3-bedroom townhouses, single garage for $370K. Right? So then, if you look at it, that's the ECB. So the next suburb, what's the next suburb to Springfield heading towards Redbank Plains? Brookwater. So the last 10 sales in Brookwater have been over $1 million. So what's the next suburb from that? Or across from that is Stocklands Development, Augustine Heights. Right? Fairly similar. House and land packages are $450 to $550. Right? So if you go and push further, so the interesting thing is that going west, if we're running out at the moment, and this is Springfield Central, right? What I believe, or what my research shows me, that the next opportunity is Redbank Plains. Right? For a couple of reasons is you've got a government spend, so the continuation of the train line, this red line, at the moment terminates at Springfield Central, right? It'll come through here. So what's the next proposed big train station? It's at the end of Schools Road, Redbank Plains, right? So also this freeway here that runs from Brookwater that comes through is joining up, and they're going to run it through the back and linking through Augustine Heights, Australands Development. So within here, that's Australands, so it's got the same ECB as that. So this next suburb is basically Redbank Plains. So at the moment, you've got to go out here. You've got Brookwater. So the Woolies have just done a big thing here. Who knows the Redbank Plains Shopping Centre on the corner of, well, they've just basically signed off and redeveloping that, which I'll show you. A big spend. Right? Coming through, you come down Schools Road to 2 major developers have purchased land banks in that area. So being Divine and being Lend-Lease or Investor Group. Right? So they're building master plan communities. Right? Again, they've probably got A's in uni where I got C's, but who knows. The thing is, it has a limited land supply because within that belt, they're maintaining these green belts. Right? So if you look at Redbank Plains and if you look at the supply of it, ultimately, you've got a future major freeway coming through. You've got 2 major developers who have bought up all the available land within that proximity of where the new train station's going, where the major shopping centre's going, and all that. Right? So they're land banking, and as Steve said, they control the market. So, you know, we were trying to look at getting opportunities for land there the other week. You know, they released 40 blocks and got 60 expressions of interest. Right? So developers are smart, so the next opportunity, what's going to happen to the land price? Goes up. So they control it. So I've got that one duplicated. So if you look at Redbank Plains, just to go back here, see this side here? Right. Woolies have bought that block. That's block there. Right. So they're putting in a proposed, and they've basically signed off on that. This is the Redbank Plains Shopping Centre. You know, I don't know, what's that, Red Rooster or something? Or there's a few little tenants at the moment. Construction's just about to start. So when you know you're heading down towards Redbank Plains, so this is basically the traffic lights, I think that's Kedges Road, you're heading down there. They're redeveloping that whole and all that grass area that's all down the side, other side of Redbank Plains. They're redeveloping that into Coles have been secured, Target's been secured, there's another 3,000 square metres of additional retail. Expansion, guess who's going to move in their Woolies, you know? 900 car spaces, and they've got to basically do this road up all the way to Schools Road to handle the traffic. So the council's smart. You know, yes, you can do that development, but you're going to save us dollars by upgrading the roads. It's quite interesting. So Redbank's private school, the end of Schools Road, there's a private Catholic school there at the moment. It's under the first stage. Along Schools Road, you'll see that the road has been done up where the Fernbrook and Mount View estates are, so they've made them contribute and do that part of the road up. So that will be duplicated all the way through as well. So the major estates in there, and you know, you can get on Google or realestate.com and you'll find house and land packages in Redbank Plains, or you'll find packages in Redbank Plains, or you'll find packages that might be cheaper than the ones that basically they're going to be presented to you today. But what you've got to do is just make sure that you're comparing apples to apples. So there's areas within Redbank Plains that I don't like, and there's areas in Redbank Plains that I like. It's like Newcastle and the Hunter Valley. There's areas that I liked and there's areas that I didn't like. The main reason where I push you to go is into master plan communities, right? Because they're public listed companies. They have to, what's the catch cry? We don't do developments, we create communities, right? So they put the parks in, they put the shopping precincts, they do the roads. You know, it's completely different than if Joe Blow, who's just bought 4 farms, and cut it up and put postage stamps in there and through. And the thing is that these are sold through real estate agents, through display home villages, so you have a high owner-occupier ownership, right? If you look at a lot of little infill states of these people who are cutting up their farms and their opportunities, they're all sold to investors, right? And they're all just cookie-cutter little houses. So these people have covenants, they have everything that you've got to adhere to. So, going through that. So this is Fernbrook, right? So if you look back here, I can't see it probably from here, all this on the back of Fernbrook is a tree, is national park. Right? So these areas are landlocked. So what drives price? Supply demand. Yeah. So if land runs out, what happens? Price goes up. Right? And what we're finding now is Fernbrook, that the availability of land has been secured by 2 major developers. What's happening in the little infill estates is they're starting to create density, so they've got to go for townhouses because they're paying more for their land now. So the developer's got to get a return on his investment or his feasibility, so he's got to increase it. He's got to increase the density. So areas that have a land component will become valuable. And what we're finding now that is flat land is getting harder to find, right? So the cost to build is going higher because they've got to come up with different concepts. They've got to come up with split level designs. They've got to do retaining walls. They've got to do all these sort of things, yet trying to maintain a price point, right? So the cookie cutter builder can't just go and throw sausages on these estates. You know, it's got to go to a custom home design. Right? So Fernbrook, and the beauty of it is it's master planned. Right? You know, there's walking tracks, there's chin-up bars, there's you know, dog parks. Right? Because the thing is, to stay within a price point, what do they have to do? They've got to reduce the land component. So gone are the days where you had 1,000-metre blocks. You know, you look at Sydney, what, 280 square metre blocks, right? And they're terraces, they're just duplexes. Right? So the beauty of going and looking at a master plan estate is you've got to look at it from an investor point of view. If I want to sell that property, is it more attractive to sell? If I want to rent that property, is it more attractive to rent? So, you know, I had a big argument with a guy the other day and said, oh, my kids are never going to play. You know, I've got nowhere to play. Master plan communities, they create parks. And he said, well, I don't want my kid going. I said, hey, when was the last time your 14-year-old kid went out the backyard and kicked a soccer ball? Right? Was there a blackout? His PlayStation wasn't working? You know? They don't do it.
Actually, a lot of, for a location that I've been pretty much for the last 13, 14 years, which is Balmain in the inner west in Sydney, the average square meterage rate of a block of land in that whole type peninsula, Balmain, Rozelle, Birch Grove, East Balmain, is 180 square metres. Yep. That's the average block size, and people have been living there for the last 100 years. So as they've gone out, the blocks have gotten bigger, but now they're all being retracted to smaller size blocks. So you might think, how can someone, geez, that's a small block, how can someone live like, you know what, they can get a lot smaller, because it all comes down to the architectural planning of the allotment and the dwelling on the allotment and catering for today's standard of living. It's, and then designing communities where people can go down and get out of the house for a little bit of
Well, you look at the old places, like in
property,
Melbourne and Sydney and Paran, you know, the old laneway lots and all those sort of things.
Yeah.
You know, we've got to remember Brisbane is such a young city too. You know, we're just really evolving from being a country town to a city, right? And people, you know, will argue and fight against that, but it's going to happen. You know, it's one of the best places to live. So, you know, we go through there. So, streetscapes, you know, as I said, there's parks, there's chin-up bars, there's dog parks. You know, there's different designs. It's not like the Truman Show, you know, where they're all the, you know, I've been in this, you know, development and looking with real estate for a long time. You know, I can drive down streets in Brisbane and know, I know who built that street, you know, I know which builder built that, you know, because they just have a standard style. Right? So we go from there. How are we going for time? Parks. You know, opportunities. The roads are wider. Right? All that sort of stuff. So this is the state that we're looking at the moment, which is Fernbrook. As I said, it's all basically land bank. Down here is that proposed Woolies, there's a sports complex over here, and then we've got another one over here which is a Devine estate, which is Mount View, which again is master plan. It's a Devine development. And I suppose what we've got to get out as Brisbane people is the psychological component of, oh, it's Redbank Plains, right? You know, my job is to try and take all that emotion out of it and give you the theory behind it. It's like me when I moved up here and I could have bought in a Nava. You know, I'm kicking myself I didn't buy it, right? And I should know better. Right? It's like a share, you don't buy it on emotion. So what's the next hot spot? In my educated opinion, it's these areas. Right? And why?
Who did you say was building in Fernbrook?
It's a lot of different builders. But we use, I suppose, one of the builders that we're very tightly associated with from, I suppose, when we look at our research, we use GW Homes. I don't know if you've ever heard of GW Homes. It's probably Brisbane's oldest builder. Right? They've been around for 40 odd years, family business, you know, they do what they say. It's like the developers, you know, master plan developers do what they say. They have to do it. They're public listed companies. They can't afford to be on a current affair. They can't, you know, they can't afford the stigma. You know, so if they say they're going to do something, they do it.
If a builder goes broke,
yeah,
GW are on the panel to send them in to fix up other builders' mistakes.
Well, Andrew's on the head of the Master Builders Association.
Yeah.
Great little areas. So, why do I think it's the next opportunity? Is because of this. 3.2 kilometres away, you're paying 370k to 420k. Right. So, go 3 kilometres, you're paying that. Go, you know, nearly 4 kilometres, you're paying that.
Only in Queensland.
No, well, you know what, it's
not.
The ripple
effect. It's all over Australia.
No, just you can have a suburb that's not paying very much right next door to one that is paying a lot of money. I don't know if you've got that anywhere else, but
so the vacancy rate. The other thing is the vacancy rate for this area. So there's 15,000 people in the population, or sorry, in the postcode of Redbank Plains. Right? So if you work it out, there's 3.1 people per household. So let's make maths easy. There's 3 people. So that's 5,000. I'm writing dollars, mate. 5,000. So if you go on to realestate.com, I think there's 70 places for rent in that area. Right? So let's make maths easy because I'm not great at it. Even if it was 100, that's a 2% vacancy rate. That's incredible. And then if you do the selection right and follow this and look at investing in an area where a tenant wants to live over another property, because let's be honest, at some stage you're going to be competing for a tenant. It doesn't matter where you invest, right? But if you're in a master plan community in a custom home designed place that has air cons, ceiling fans, compared to some old Queenslander in the back of Redbank Plains as well. And you've got to keep in mind this is an older suburb of Redbank Plains as well. Who's going to get the tenant? Who's going to get the higher rent? Right? And then if you tick all these boxes as these areas do, who's going to get the capital growth?
Yeah, it's a hard thing to gauge it on like realestate.com when you look on there, because you do see some on that are vacant, but you've got people that are knocking their old Vibro homes down, putting a new home, trying to rent it for the same price that they're getting in Mount View or Fernbrook, but they're not, because people want to move into Fernbrook or Mount View because that's that community feel. All the houses around them are beautiful versus just the ones next door are still old Vibro homes. And that's what you can't see in the internet, can you?
So as I said, my job's really just to find that spot, and I suppose that's what Steve employs me to do and all that sort of stuff.
The other is this walkability score. How walkable, the family and kids, how walkable the area is.
Walking wise,
Yeah, walking wise.
there's paths and there's parks and
Footpath and
running tracks where they've got even rocks with the distance that you've ran over, like you've done 50 metres, 100 metres, 150 metres, that sort of thing.
Off-leash dog parks where you take your dog and let it run around because your yards aren't big enough for your Great Dane.
Yeah. Because we are going obese and people wants to be health conscious, so they usually check for walkability score.
Yeah.
With high walkability score, people like for health and fitness.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, what are the sort of rental rates?
So at the moment it's pretty close to being dollar for dollar. And that's why investors are moving out of Sydney and Melbourne and looking at Brisbane, right? So when I went back to that property clock, so Sydney, let's pick a number, but it's past its growth, it's plateauing now. So if you look at it, property markets are cyclical, right? So what tends to happen is that we have something that happens and we have a growth in price and people can't afford. So then what happens is they rent, right? Now rents, because most people sign a 12-month or a 6-month lease, the rents can't catch up to the property price as fast as what the property price grows. Does it make sense? Because you can't just ring them halfway through the lease and say, I'm putting up $20, and go from there. And if you look at the property market, sorry Steve, I'm sort of going over. If that's basically dollars and that's time, right? It doesn't matter nationally where you look at the market. Real estate tends to go like this, and then it goes bang, then it goes like this, and it might go like that, and it'll go like this, and it'll go like that, then it'll go like this, and it'll go bang, and then it'll go like this, right? But it gravitates up. So if you look at that, to say that being 10 years, how do you predict that? Right? You can to a point, but if I had a crystal ball, I wouldn't be standing here, right? So the thing is it's a buy and hold strategy. It's not, it's not when do I get into the market, or it's how long can I stay in the market, right? And the hardest thing is making that commitment. So how many people, we've said before, wish they bought it probably 30 years ago? Can I predict what that growth is? No one can. Because it's driven by infrastructure, it's driven by interest rates, it's population growth, all that sort of thing. What I do know that if you look at these over the years, here is a similar thing to the GFC. So we've had a share market crash. Right? So every property growth has followed probably 4 to 5 years after the GFC. And you can research that back yourself. So Brisbane, from an investment point of view, is the best I've ever seen it. Interest rates are below 4.9%, you know. Affordability is there. Where's the area? Where's the government doing the spend? What's the growth opportunity?
What does that do to the rental market? Like, if the interest rates are really low, then it means more people can afford
Because that's what
to
happens.
buy.
That's what I'm saying, cyclical. So therefore it's more attractive. So people think, we're here to buy it on the radio now. If you're paying $380 a week, you should be buying a house.
Yeah.
Right? So people enter the rental market, exit the rental market and enter the buyer's market. So what's that do? Drive supply and demand up.
So rents will always be, the lowest rents will be is now. They're as low as they can pretty much get. And the reason why is because the renters go, wow, I can spend just as much paying a premium rent to buy a house, pay the low interest rate at the moment. So renters turn into buyers. That's what drives property growth. To find that dollar in 1,000, to get that now here, that's great now. But that won't be the case in 12 months' time, 2 years' time, 3 years' time. You will not get a dollar for 1,000. You're getting it now, so you're very fortunate. As soon as those prices start increasing, which they're doing already, those prices have increased since late last year, since October last year. They've probably gone up $15,000 to now, right? So if you're getting $1 for 1,000 now, grab onto it, because in 12 months' time, 2 years' time, it won't be $1 for 1,000. You'll be going, why are the rents so low, Steve? That's what you'll be saying. But then the rents start to catch up. So as soon as interest rates start increasing, Australia as a whole, so like Sydney, for example, there's no way you get $1 for 1,000. But what do you get in return? You get good, strong capital growth. But then interest rates go up, the growth stops, then the rents start picking up, because now it's unaffordable to buy. There's now people start renting, they're paying a premium rent. Then we'll get to a point where you can have auctions on who pays the most premium rent. Those sort of things start to come into play, but not now, not in this environment. So here you're fortunate where you're getting the best rate, and then you get the capital growth with still the return on that amount that you've borrowed. And that doesn't fluctuate, that will only get better, and while you're getting capital growth. So you're in the best position where you're getting $1 for 1,000.
So
because that won't last.
Rents don't make you wealthy. No. You know, unless you've got 500 properties, or Steve Ignite, you know, 100-300 properties. And, you know, I had this argument with my brother-in-law all the time, because, you know, he paid me to find him an investment property, and I found it to him. He didn't buy it. He said, "Oh no, it's, you know, it's negative cash flow." I bet you he wish he bought it now, right? Because it's really it's the equity that makes you wealthy. You know, it's not. You know, so sometimes you've got to, I suppose, sacrifice cash flow for a delayed gratification. That's it. That's me. Any questions?
Okay, fantastic. Well done. So you've got a round of applause there. Thank you very much, Roland. Well done, well done. Well done. I just want to also highlight, because a big part, and this is one thing you should ask anyone that I guess that's in the property investing game, do you invest in yourself? Absolutely, I do. I invest a lot in the Hunter. My family invests in the Hunter. I also just want to show you a property that I've purchased as well in Redbank Plains itself. Do you know where there was that blue line that came around and had all the different, the purple, the pink and the blue shaded areas on where to invest? Well, I just bought a property that's just within that vicinity here. This is 31 Samantha Street, and it's just under 15,000 square metres, so it's a huge block. And I was very fortunate because with me investing, I like to go into an area as well, and I threw in a bunch of different offers of a few different people, and every now and then I get one that grabs. And I was just very, very fortunate that a couple that own this property, 31 to 35 Samantha Street, they lived there for 30 years, just has one house on it. I put in 3 offers. They wanted the middle offer, and so one of them was settle in 2 years' time for this price. Pretty much, I'll settle in 12 months' time for this price, and then there was one where I just lowballed it, and I thought if they get this one, that would be amazing. And what happened was, they were keen to accept the second offer, and they never, and what happened was they actually got an approval to get a hip replacement. The lady got a hip replacement booked in. So what they wanted to do was they needed cash now, straight away, as a result. And I didn't plan on buying property cash straight away. I wanted to go through the loan process and still free up cash so I can do other little bits and pieces as well. So they said, listen, we need cash right now. We're willing to do this deal here straight away, but we need an injection of a certain amount immediately. Plus we can, and I negotiated a few months extension. I actually settled on complete on this on the 1st of June. So, do you know how much I picked this property up for? And I'll show you the, I'll show you what it actually is. So here you've got the Mount View Estate, which Rowan was just going through, and it's this whole block here. There's one house on it. Now the site next door is DA approved for 42 lots. Now, 17 lots along here, plus another like 24 medium townhouses. That's what the next door was DA approved for. Now, I bought this lot, I didn't buy this one. The one next door I bought, it's exactly the same. So straight away that next day, I booked in a civil engineer, accountants, everyone, town planners, architects, met them on the site, had meetings with all the senior town planners at Ipswich Council, just to make sure that I could at least replicate that. I had no plans of doing this, because I'm not doing this to sell, I'm doing this to hold on to, because I can see what's happening out there with growth. So think about this. If I can do that, that's a photo of a block of land, it's absolutely huge. So that's it there. So that's that outline of that blue, remember that blue outline that went right out? And this is Mount View Estate, so that's that lot there. This one here is DA approved for 42 lots. Now, think of this. Every time, and people are just buying houses here to invest in, and hopefully their house increases. Every time a house increases by $10,000, you buy a house increased by $15,000 just since October last year. So if a house increases by $10,000, I can times it by 42. Right? So where's the money? Is the money in developing it and selling it? No. The money's in holding it and doing it in 10 years' time. Because if anything, those controls are going to get tighter and tighter over time, and I might be able to put a few more lots on there. But I don't do it to sell straight away. I do it for an investment for the long term. Do you know how much I bought that property for? Have a guess.
300,000?
800.
No, I bought it for $1,050,000. So plus stamp duty, 1.1 million. Guess what I got it valued for? Valuation came at 650,000. Guess how much rent I get for it? 350. So am I buying it because the valuation came in? Do I care about the valuation? No, I don't care. Why? Because there's an opportunity there. The opportunity is growth, right? So is there money in it now? Yeah, but probably not that much. It's too tight, right? Because when you do civil engineering work, that's not my expertise. I don't have that experience in there. So it's too much risk for me to even go down that path. So I'm not interested in doing that. The money is in holding it. So am I worried about the rental return? No. Does it matter? Is the money in the rent? No. If I've got double the amount of rent, is the money in the rent? No. Well, 10 times the amount of rent. Money's still not in the rent. Money's in the growth. And it's always the case. Who get too caught up with $20, $30 here? It's not what it's about. It's always about the capital growth. And there's no reason why any of you can't do these sort of deals, but you need the equity to be able to do it, and you need to be able to pounce on certain situations when the opportunities come up. But it comes down to building that equity base over time. So in 10 years' time, when you've got your equity, then you might be in a situation to do these sort of deals in the location that's hot. At the end of the day, there's always, all we're doing here with these locations is showing you, out of the whole of Australia, the 25,000 suburbs, where's the best location to go at that price point? At the Hunter, 450 to 550. At the at 350 to 450, this is the location. So then where is it going to be next year? Or the year after that, and the year after that? That's what our guys are working on to find out. And we don't release it till things have been signed off and ticked off and we get in there in its infancy. So it's about giving you the best opportunity to get growth. Because where do you go, anywhere around Australia, 30 k's out or 25, 30 k's out of the CBD and get brand new 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom, double lock-up garage for 370, 80 grand. Where do you go? Nowhere. You don't get in Sydney, that's long gone. Penrith, in Sydney, you're paying $700,000, $800,000. Doonside, 2 years ago was $650,000 in a new estate. To have a community estate, it just doesn't happen anymore. So if you know Sydney, you experience that, it becomes a no-brainer. And that's all it is. And just like Roland was saying, it's about how much can you do and spend that time in the marketplace. Because I invest in there as well, different scale, but at the end of the day, it's the same. It's the same. I'm doing it to rely on growth. Same thing. And if there's no growth, then I'm doing my dollar as well, because I'm not getting a really good, strong rental return. So that's it. What I'd like to do is invite Shane up to the front, because we've actually done some calculations. I'll give you a hand to hand some of these out, Shane. So because the price point's a lot cheaper, you can have a bit of a look, and I think we start at $350, is that right, Shane? Or $380? $380. So we've got $380,000 on here. So if you flip over the first page, we won't spend too much time on it, but that will just, we can just work out $7. Yeah, I'll grab one for you. Maybe you can just borrow someone's
Alright guys, so if you guys all had a chance to have a look at the property investment calculator, is there anyone that hasn't received a property investment calculator? You guys have attended a workshop, or you haven't been to a workshop, have you?
No.
Okay.
You attending tomorrow's workshop?
Oh, okay. So at the workshop, what will happen is they'll send out this property investment calculator. Has anyone had any particular problems using the calculator? Any questions regarding it? Just to give you, has anyone not used it? A few people? Yeah? Okay. It's a really good tool to be able to utilise, because what it is able to do is that if you have other investment properties or your own house, you're able to take all the information into that particular calculator and add all the values in, and it will track your property portfolio. It will tell you how much, if you achieved a certain amount of capital growth, it will work out your out-of-pocket expenses on your investment properties. You'll be able to analyse your property to determine which one is working for you or which one maybe you should look at selling. That's a question we often get. People will say, Shane, should I keep this property or sell this property? And what I'll get those persons to do is to get the calculator out and put all the costs associated to that property, so we can work out what is it actually holding you to keep that property. And if it's costing you a lot of money out of your pocket, it may not be the right property for you. So I want to just highlight a couple of things here. If we can open up to this financial summary that says $380,000, because that's roughly the price point on average of what we're looking at here today in Redbank Plains. Now, it's a little bit maybe a bit hard to read, but we put down here the market value, and this was printed obviously in 2014, but the market value is $380,000. Okay. Building inspection is $495, and that is just, once the house is complete, we send a builder to go around and inspect it to make sure it's okay. With these financial summary, I've always gone to worst case scenario. So what you're going to see here is the worst case scenario to see what this will cost you, if anything, out of your pocket. So I'll put a 10% deposit down of $38,000. Because it's in Queensland, there's stamp duty, but you only pay stamp duty on the land portion. So that is $5,040. Legal fees are roughly $1,500. So the total cash that you would need would be about $44,500 as a deposit to put down on this particular property. Now you can put a 5% deposit down, but I've just gone middle of the road here. Then I spoke to Xavier about the different costs associated to setting up a loan. He said that, I said, once again, what's the worst case scenario? He said, well, most banks don't charge setup fees, but some do, and it's about $600. Mortgage insurance is $5,643 because we're borrowing at 90%. valuation $300 and registration fees $384. Now you can see there next to it is capitalised. So what does that mean? That means that we're adding those fees to the loan. And what's going to happen is that $6,927, we're allowed to amortise that. That means take that cost and divide it by 5 and claim it over the next 5 years. Okay, that's what the Australian Tax Office government will allow us to do. We're not improving it, we're not selling it. Now, as you can see here, one of the things that people are going to say is, wow, Shane, that's pretty low rent. $330 per week is low rent. And, as I said, we want to go worst case scenario. I've also factored in 2 weeks vacancy. So I'm saying even at $330 a week rent, I'm still allowing for 2 weeks vacancy per annum. We've got water rates, council rates $1,800, building insurance $650, letting fee of $330. That other is landlord's insurance of $365, the terrace share. Property management fee roughly 8% on average. Loan details. Now, on the right-hand column where it says tax and market factors, depreciation schedule, that's the actual depreciation schedule. So if you may or may not know, but you can take the building cost and you can depreciate that over 40 years or 2.5% per annum. And you can take the fixtures and fittings. What are they? They're things like curtains and carpets and appliances, and you can depreciate that over a 10-year period. Okay? So when we take that depreciation and take the building depreciation and the fixtures and fittings depreciation and pull it together, that is what we got. Now there's 2 different scales that you can use, okay? One is a diminishing value, which means you get claim more up front in the first few years and less on the end, or you can have an average over the 10-year period. What we recommend is that you choose a diminishing scale because it's the first few years that are going to be the ones that are going to be out of pocket, and then as rents start to go up, it'll start to even itself
That's
out.
what you've done here, Shane.
That's what we've done there, yep. So average capital growth 8%, that's assuming this property is going to double in just under 10 years. 3% CPI, inflation. Now, I said to Xavier, I said, look, if someone wants to purchase this property at $380,000, what is the lowest amount of income that they would need? And he said about $52,000. And he said they would probably just scrape in around $52,000. So I'll put a single person on 52. Now, if you turn over this sheet, this is going to be the forecast. It's called the 10-year forecast. So what you'll see here is the first section is called capital growth. And it's saying here that if the property today costs $380, in the next 10 years, if you achieved on average 8% capital growth, that $380 property would be worth about $820,000. Okay? That means that you would have nearly equity, nearly $500,000 worth of equity in that property. Okay? What I like in this calculator is if you look down here in the loan and equity section, there's something that says equity for refinance at 90%. Okay? Now, when you want to refinance a loan, the banks will only lend you up to 90%. They won't let you go past to 95. It's only up to 90% for refinance. Okay? Now, if you look here, you will see that by the second or third year, there will be enough equity in there to be able to draw down from that property to go again, okay? Which is exciting. The rental income and yields obviously are low because I put a low figure in there, but this is the income generated, for example, in the first column there in 2015, $16,500, okay? Then we go down to annual expenses. Now these are your cash expenses. These are what you physically have to find. You have to find $17,000 in interest costs. You have to find $4,400 in property costs. That's agents' fees, all the rates and all the insurances that I mentioned. Added together comes to that. So in total you need $21,731 in costs. What are you collecting in rent? $16,500. Are you short? Absolutely. How much are you short? If you look down here, pre-tax cash flow, you're short about $5,000 a year. Okay. However, because we're now an investor, the Australian government allows us to claim certain deductions. Okay. So what it allows us to do is take that depreciation and also the loan costs and take that off what we've received as an income. So $15,000 depreciation, plus if we add the annual expenses, which is our cash, collectively together, we get 38,117. Okay? Now some of you who are good at maths will go, well, hang on, 15 plus 31 is 36, right? Not 38. But remember that I talked about that loan amortised over 5 years? That's factored in there. Now what they're doing is they're upgrading the program, and they're going to actually put a section there, because a lot of people are getting confused, which talks about loan amortisation. So that comes to a net loss of 21,000. Are we all following how we got the net loss? Yeah. You just took the total deduction from the income and you got a loss. Now on 52,000, you're not paying a lot of tax. But if we take back net loss that and do your tax return, it means you're going to get $6,000 back. Okay. Now you can get that back annually in one lump sum hit, or what we suggest if you're working and do a tax variation form, exactly, and you're going to get it back in your pay packet. Okay? We use that amount to offset this property, okay? And you'll see here down the bottom here, you're getting $17 per week cash flow positive, okay? So what does that mean? Well, it means if you have purchase this property for $380,000 and you only get $330 a week in rent, and you're on $52,000, it's cash flow positive. Cash flow positive for the first year, and for the next 10 years, cash flow positive. However, if you earn more than $52,000, then that number is going to be bigger because you're paying more tax and you get a bigger tax deduction. Does that make sense? And if you get more than $330 a week rent, like Rowan's saying, between $370 to $390. So if you've got $370 in rent, which is another $40 a week more, on $52,000, you could be up around the $50, $60 mark cash per week, cash flow positive. So really, it's a no-brainer situation where, you know, when you look at what's happening in the area and you look at the location and look at what it's going to cost you to hold this property, sub 400,000, it really is a no-brainer. For me, when it comes down to property and investing in property, one of the things I always look at is something that I learned in maths in school, and goodness knows I still remember it. Do you ever remember this thing called the bell curve? Okay. And what does it mean? It means that if we look at the lower price properties over here, and we look at high price properties over here, okay, what does this curve suggest? Okay, and this is what we call, this here is the average, right? This is the, what do we call the average? The median, right? Alright, so this section over here, which is your $1.5, $2.5, $3 million properties, obviously there are properties there, but they're not as much as the median, which is, you know, the 450k mark, for example. Okay, so there's not as many properties in that category, and there's not as many buyers or people potentially wanting to rent those types of properties. Now, over here in the lower case, in the 200, 250, 300, there's still not as many properties in that price range, and there's also not that many people wanting to rent those types of properties either, right? So if we look over here, the key for me, and this has been a key focus in my personal investing, is I always want to stay just shy of the median over here, because I've got that room to move in terms of capital growth, and I've also been able to still maximise with the most amount of people that are able to purchase my property if I wanted to sell, and most amount of people looking to rent that property. Does that make sense? Yeah. And so this, at 380 over here, is a perfect price point to be getting involved in, you know.
Can I add to that?
Sure.
Because some of you might go off and think, well, wait a minute, I look at Redbank Plains, for example, and the price we're paying is above the median. Let me ask you, do you know how the median is derived? How do they come up with the median house price? Sorry?
Including vacant land?
Everything, including everything. Do you know how it comes about?
They see the lowest price to highest price and then pick the middle somewhere.
Yeah, they do. But here's one of the things that occur. When you look at websites like realestate.com, a lot of them can go off, like with the Office of State Revenue, they go off how much stamp duty is paid. Right? How much stamp duty is paid, then they average it out. Now when you've got the average house price or stamp duty that's being paid in a new estate, new estates are more expensive than old established areas, right? So you've got, let's just say you've got a house that's selling for $300,000, an old 3-bedroom, 5-row home. Selling for $300,000. And that median house price is probably a little bit less than that. But then you're buying a house for $380,000 in a new estate. When you purchase a block, a house and land package in a new estate, and they're all house and land packages, every single one of them, you're paying stamp duty on that block of land. So that's what's registered with the Office of State Revenue. How much is that block of land? $160,000 or $150,000. So you're paying stamp duty on $150,000. So what does that do to the median house price? It drops it down. Lower than an old 3-bedroom, 5-row home that's selling for 300 grand, right? So it becomes very skewed. So when you look at the median house price, you can't go off that. So how do they increase the median house price? Sale. They're not going to do it in a new estate now. They're going to do that in 5, 6, 10 years when people start selling those houses as a house and land completed. And they're selling them for $500,000, and that's when the median house price suddenly goes off. So when you're reading the Australian Property Investor magazine, you're looking there going, wow, they had a 30% increase over the last 12 months. But that just starts to, it's just a flow-on effect of people that have lived there for 5, 6, 7 years, and they're moving on. They've got some growth, they're moving up, scaling to a bigger property, they sell that property, and suddenly, or whatever the case might be. But that's how you get a dramatic increase in growth. So you've got to be careful because there's a lot of, when you dissect it, it can be a little bit misleading at times as well. So don't go too much off that. But theoretically, what Shane is saying is really true. Because when you look at the new estate and you segment this in a new estate, and you go, there's higher priced properties in the new estate that are selling for, say, $600,000, and there's ones that are selling for $300,000. We want to sit just behind the 8 ball because we don't want to be breaking suburb records.
And also that median I was talking about, I should have clarified, I'm talking about Brisbane in a medium house price range, you know?
Yeah. So, but you've got to dissect them all just to really go through them all. So what we want to do now is actually, Yolanda, I was hoping maybe I'll give you a hand to hand them out, but we just want to hand out the stock list so you can actually have a look at and see what types of properties there are in these new estates as well. And we can go through all those now. We'll go through this. Actually, there's something quite exciting that's happening on the stock list. I'll let Shane go through it all first, and then we can we'll go through it all together. And then I just want to say something pretty exciting about that at the end.
Okay. All right. So what we've got here, well, one of the things is that you're going to notice that we don't have a great deal of stock available. And Steve's probably going to touch on that, or one of the reasons. Have you already touched on that? What we've had to do is we get, as Steve would have mentioned, if you came to our workshop, we get drip fed properties. How it basically works is once we provide a purchaser on a particular property, and then they sign a contract on that, we'll give it back to them with a deposit, and then they will renew it with another block of land. When you're dealing, and this is one of the problems, is that when you're dealing in a hot location, something that is really booming, it's really hard to get hand on a lot of stock. I know there are property companies out there that will sell investment properties and they'll have heaps and heaps of properties available, but when you're looking at something like that, if you've got heaps and heaps available, clearly you're not in a dynamic environment. So with these ones over here, the first section up the top in Redbank Plains in Fernbrook Ridge Estate, and there's one in Mount View, is it Mount View or Mountain? Mount View. It's got Mountain View here. All right. Okay, so you're looking, the floor plans are on the side over here. So you've got, these are the GW homes. So you've got lot 524. That's the house design and its positioning on the lot. And we've got lot 584. 584, I think it's Yolo. I'm not sure if these are the ones that match up. We've got 496. No. We're missing 652, 531, 533.
Yeah, that's fine.
So, where's lot 652? We've got 584.
Yeah.
Is that on the, where's the one that Ben gave? Maybe it's on that.
No. Sorry guys, because a bunch of properties got sold just as of yesterday and a couple today, so it's a last minute change with updating the stock list. So you guys, I know that you guys haven't attended a workshop yet, so you'll see a lot of the details that we go into in the workshop will make sense tomorrow, or things that we're going into, because everybody here has been to attended a workshop, and they go through a selection process at the end of the workshop as well. So you're probably fortunate today because everybody's seen it. It's like a chip to a bunch of seagulls at the end of the workshop, in a way. So you're in a fortunate situation.
All right. So look, if we haven't got it, what we'll do is it's going to be emailed out to you.
Yeah.
Okay. But the key things I want to point out is that these are the GW homes. Now, if you look over here, the registration is out in May 15 and April 15. Okay. The Duocs are available now. Okay, that's another builder, Oracle. They're putting 2 properties on the one lot. So they've got a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom property, plus a 1-bedroom, 1-bathroom property. So there's only 2 of those that we have available. And then some people request it's the self-managed properties. It's not in Redbank Plains, okay? It's very difficult to get self-managed properties. Steve will talk to you about the reasons why. But we all know where Kalanga is?
Yeah.
North Lakes? Yeah. So a great price point there for $355, and will be settled in August 15.
So the nuts and bolts of it is this: you can lock down one of those properties in those areas. So for the cost of $1,000. Now $1,000, it doesn't mean that you own the property or you can buy the property, because none of you can buy a property here today. But what you can do is you can put your foot on the price, because as the locations are increasing in price, you've reserved that price for $1,000. Now, when you can't settle on a block of land or purchase a property till it's registered. So you've got that time, and sometimes it might be a month out, whatever the case might be. You've got that time. In that time, the prices are increasing, but you're locked in at today's prices for $1,000. Plus, you can go through the process of getting finance. Now, if your finance falls out for whatever reason, then you get your $1,000 refunded back to you, and the property goes back on the market, and they'll sell it at a higher price, whatever that price is at that time. So the beauty of it is, for $1,000, you can reserve something that's not ready yet, but it gives you time. It's all about time in the market, right? So what you'll also find is that, and you'll all get this, as you leave, you're going to get a little 3 handouts that are all collated together. So you'll get the handout, you've already got the cash flow analysis, you're going to get the Ipswich Terry Ryder report. That's a full write down, which is his named Ipswich, all this location in the top 5 picks for 2015. And what you'll tend to find is that the details and breakdown of like a Terry Ryder report. Like Terry Ryder has a business called Hotspotting. He writes for the Australian newspaper, and he's renowned in Australia as an expert. What you'll find is when we really dig deep and look at the detail that he puts in his reports, they're still not as strong as the detail that where our guys have got when it comes to the Hunter, or when it comes to the southeast Queensland, because these guys are living it amongst it every day, where he's doing the whole of Australia, so he just doesn't have the manpower to be able to inject in the time into his reports. But it'll give you a good understanding from a credible source. You'll also get these variations. Now, this variation report is on rentals. You guys will get this tomorrow as well, and we'll go into more detail tomorrow. And this will explain, we'll actually have a tender report in here. This tender report is for construction. The only way to compare a house that you might see online on realestate.com and a house that you see that you're looking at purchasing is to get the contract, the building contract and the land contract, and sit them side by side. That is the only way to do it. Because you'll go, how come there's $40,000 difference between one 4-bedroom house versus another 4-bedroom house? And usually when you have a 20 square metres difference and there's $1,000 a square metre in construction costs in house sizes, well, that's a big justification within itself. And then there's a whole lot of smaller components like al fresco under the main roof, made tile roof versus under a Colorbond roof, and having a slab underground on the ground versus just dirt. It's all these little components. So the only way you can identify that, unless you have it, the only way you can really assess the difference is by having 2 building contracts sitting by side and compare apples with apples, not apples with oranges, because that's what you do unless you have 2 building contracts, the only way to do it. So there's a whole lot of frequently asked questions. Capital growth versus high rents, what's the difference? $1 per thousand, we spoke a little bit about that before. When it comes to a dynamic area, the fundamentals of what an investor looks at is totally different to what when you're in a dynamic area versus just relying on 7 to 10 year growth. Here, yes, we want the property double in 7 to 10 years because that would be, there's going to be ups and downs and all sorts of things happening in that time frame. But what we want to do is we want to ensure that those sort of things, that growth is going to happen in that time frame. But what we want to do is that could very well happen sooner. So we want to just be in the best, have the best opportunity, in the best position, the best location for that to occur. Because we know properties don't double every 7 to 10 years. They can take 15, 20 years to double, and they can double in 3 or 4, 5 years as well. But we just want to make sure that if we have a 10-year plan, that 10-year plan, we're getting some good growth along the way and be in the best situation. And people are buying properties anyway, and they're wondering why these properties aren't doubling. Because just like Ron was going through, you're ticking all these boxes. It's in the number 1 location, ticks all the boxes, right? If you want to be in the number 2 location, you simply tick less boxes. Number 3, number 4, number 5, you tick less, ticking half the boxes, get to like location number 10, 12, 11, and you're not ticking any boxes anymore. And people think that's a great investment. And you know what, there's 25,000 suburbs plus in Australia. So you only have to get to like level 12, suburb 12, before you're not ticking any of those exciting boxes anymore. And people wonder why, properties aren't doubling in 7 to 10 years all the time. If you wanted properties double in 7 to 10 years and have less risk, you just spend more money and buy within the 5Ks of a CBD. $1, $2 million, but we can't afford that. So where's the best location for price points we can afford? That's all we're trying to do here, right? So you'll get this report. Now on top of this is very, very exciting. We spent a lot of time working, putting a package together with Ray White. I'm not going to go through all this, but you'll get this anyway. 2-year rental guarantee. So everything, and this is for only new purchases moving forward. So we've worked very hard on this. So anybody that chooses one of those properties on the stock list, then you get a 2-year, Ray White's going to give you a 2-year rental assurance with any of those properties. So you don't have to worry about anything for the first 2 years. Cool? Sound good?
Is that Ray White local or Ray White in Sydney?
No, it's a special division of Ray White, and we negotiate with that. So they manage the property and do all those things, same rate as any other rental. Even if you find someone cheaper, they'll match it. But they've done a special thing because we only can do that with volume. So we've done that with this, do that with a special division of Ray White.
The same thing was told in the seminar. And when I inquired with the office, they said it's only Ray White Sydney.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's a division in Sydney, but it doesn't matter because they link them with other Ray Whites across the board as well. So they'll do that here in Queensland.
It's through Ray White.
It's Ray White.
Yeah, when I called the local Ray White,
they won't know.
They didn't know anything about it. When I called the office, they said it's only for Ray White Sydney.
Yeah, it's Ray White Sydney. Wherever we have the properties, they will do it. The local real estate agents won't know because there's a special division in the commercial division with Ray White. If you ring up the local real estate, there's hundreds of them. They wouldn't know it because there's a special agreement with Ray White, head office.
All right, I just want to go through this. I'll work to that. Okay, so if we go through lots 524 is this first diagram over here, okay, which is the house design, Shoalwater 205H, okay. Then, if you look at the next one, it says lot 584, that's been sold right?
It's the same house.
But it's the same house design. So Shoalwater 212 is the house design for this next property here. So you just have a look at the house design. It's not the same price, but the house design is what you're looking at, the facade, okay? Then you've got two custom properties. Now these are custom properties because the lots are narrow lots. These three lots, lots 652, 531 and 532 are on the back page here, where you can see the Fernbrook Ridge estate. So the first page has lot 652 here, 434 square metres. That's the location of the site, okay? And then the other two sites are here, 531 and 532, okay? They're the two properties. Now because it's a narrow site, we've had to customise, or GW Homes have customised a home. So this particular home, and it's a sloping block as well. So this is the design of the floor plan, and this is showing you how the house will sit in terms of the elevations. With what this is, you're going to have, it's going to be cut in, and you're going to have the drive, we call it the garage, down below, stepped up to the house. Okay, because of the fact that there's a lot of cutting, retaining walls and all of that, you'll find the price point is slightly higher than just building a standard home on a flat block. And that's why the land size is reduced, and so that's why it's compensated and kept it down that price. The last ones that we had, the last ones we had were 417s and stuff. That's why I thought they were this.
Yeah, those last two were they specially designed. So
they've already got.
They're a custom designed home. They're not just a standard project home. So you know, the floor plan's a little bit larger. You've got all that storage underneath. They do a great job on those. I really like those.
So just to reiterate what Steve was saying, is that none of these properties are registered. What that means is that they're still going to the council, they're still doing stuff. You can't build a house on it. The anticipated registration is May, April, June of this year, okay? Now I can assure you this status hasn't come from us. This status comes from the builders, right? Now, the builders are very, what's the word looking for? They're optimistic when it comes to registration, okay? Now a lot of people look at this and they'll say, ooh, I don't know about that, I want to get something now, right? But this is where you're missing the whole crux. And the critical part is, as Steve was mentioning, that for just $1,000, you can lock away one of these properties, right? And that's it. You lock it away at today's price. You don't have to obtain the capital growth. The longer it takes for them to get it registered, and whether it's June or August or November, next year, the longer it takes, the better off you are. Does that make sense? Yeah. Because what are you doing? You're holding it down for $1,000. If you borrow that funds, you're paying $50 a year in interest, right? Or if you use cash, it's sitting there, you want them to take as long as possible. Now, I want to point out another thing. It's not in our interest as a company to be selling unregistered properties. Do you know why? Because we don't get paid. It's going to take longer. When do we get paid? We get paid when the property is complete, right? We get a portion when it settles, and we get another portion on completion. So, why do we sell it? A lot of other companies don't do it. Why do we sell it? Because it gets back to the whole concept of what we're here today to do. And it's not to sell you one property and see you later and good luck and let's find more clients to come on board. It's about building a property portfolio. It's about building a profitable property portfolio. So we need to sell you, we need to provide properties that are going to move and going to appreciate in value. Like Steve mentioned before, Jeremy Gasper made like $90,000 odd, right, since we met him. Now, I don't know if you told the story, but straight afterwards, right, did you tell the story about the other lady, Tess?
No.
Okay. This is a perfect example, okay? This is from Perth. Steve and I met with Jeremy Gasper, okay? We actually met with them second. We had 3 appointments that day in Perth, and we met with a couple, Tess and I don't know what the gentleman's name was, but anyway, privacy purposes, so make up the name, John, right? So we met with this couple, John, and Steve and I were talking about Hunter Valley, right? And saying, look, you guys should be investing in this Hunter Valley. These are the reasons why. And it took us about 2 or 3 hours, and they were keen, right? They said, listen, we want to do this. We were excited about it, and we showed them some stuff, the properties that we had on the stock list, and they picked one. But they picked one that someone else, when we contacted Yoland, someone else had already gone and had chosen it, but they hadn't put a deposit down as yet. So we're like, oh, what do we do? And they were like, well, we want that one, right? We really want that one. We'll put a deposit down now, okay? So we're like, okay, well, first in, best dressed. That's the way it is, you know, snooze you lose, right? So they got that property and they said, look, we wouldn't buy another one. So they bought 2 properties, okay? Then what happened was, we then met Jeremy, and Jeremy purchased another property and did it on his own. And these people did it on their own, they didn't do joint venture. They did their own research, and Tess was much into research and all of this different stuff she did, and she found out about this and not sure about the rentals, and this didn't match up, and whatever she researched, she decided not to do anything, okay? Jeremy moved ahead, right? This is not that long ago. This was probably a year ago, right? When did we meet them? Exactly, it was late 2013.
It was late 2013 because it bought and then it went through the, Jeremy went through the process.
So that's when we sat down with them, right? Tess didn't do anything. They ended up pulling out the pin on all of that, and Jeremy went through and made 90,000. The point of the matter is that we could be like other property companies and just sell you whatever makes you happy. You want Queensland, like there was a gentleman here or someone said here today, they preferred to, I think it was yourself, you said you saw Hunter Valley, but you prefer to go to Redbank Plains or something to that effect because you knew it, you know, you knew the location, Hunter Valley was a bit, and a lot of people like that. Now, we could have come to, sorry, what's your name, sir? Radesh. We could have come to Radesh and said, well, listen, you know, you don't want this, we can give you this property, right? But it wouldn't have been, at that point in time, the best thing to do, you know what I'm trying to say? So, guys, look, I guess I get frustrated. I'll tell you what frustrates me, right? This is just being honest. I get frustrated because I get phone calls from people that say, Shane, you know, we joined your company a year ago and we're still in the same situation and we want to do something but we're unsure. And you know what? I see other phone conversations I have with people who have taken action and done something and they're like pulling out more equity to go again and again and they're moving forward in the right direction. But these other people got questions and doubts and it's difficult to try and overcome those limiting beliefs that's holding them back. The key of success and why Steve is here and why I'm here is because in life we just took action. We did our research. We're not saying don't do research. We do our research. We check out things. We do our calculations. We make sure all these numbers match up and we feel comfortable with it. And then what do? We take action. And do we always get it right? No, we don't. But we aren't here today by not, it's constant taking action. We don't let it stop us. It's just moving forward, moving forward, moving forward. And so, guys, there's not much property. $1,000 locks it in. Speak to Xavier or whoever the finance people is, and you know you've got till May. And in all honesty, I think it's going to be probably another 3 months after that before we
at the end of the day, it comes at a price point, location. It's just got to make sense. You look at all the information that's up there. $1,000 price point, 30 k's from a CBD. Look at the ABC video where Australia is going as a whole. They need to build another Sydney every 10 years. That's what they need to do. So to be here in CBD of Brisbane and be that close to it at that price point, whether up or down 20 grand more or less, it doesn't make any difference. Point is that where the property market is going for the long term, 5 years, 10 years, you're going to double your money. How can it, you can see it being worth 650 grand now, like nevertheless in 10 years time. We'll just look at Sydney and use that as an example. You know, if you're not happy for something, if something's holding you back for the property, the only thing that should hold you back is you can't afford it. and then we do the $30,000 grant where we'll put our money in so you can afford it to keep the ball rolling. At least that way, in a few years' time, you've at least got some equity in your property owner. At least you can get started that way. If you can't do it yourself financially, come to us, do it with us, do a joint venture with us. Any of those properties, we can afford to do it on any of those price points. It's fine. But if there's something about the property location, call me and Shane, and we'll sit down with you. We'll sit down with you. I'll have a phone conversation. I'm in Sydney, so we'll have an hour meeting over the phone. We'll go through it all. Any concerns you might have. Because if you're concerned about the Hunter, or if you're concerned about this location, then how can you not be concerned about anything else in the property market? Because these are the best locations, bottom line. It comes down to there's hot spots and not spots in each one, but you've got to get it right. Have a conversation with it. It's about moving forward. You're here for a reason. To make this happen, make it happen. It's simple as that.
Any questions? Yep.
Quick question about the dual occupancy ones.
Yep.
Do they come in a strata title or are they one title?
One title.
One title now. Yeah. So guys, just bear in mind, if you like anything that's on there, speak to, we're here now, you're more than welcome to speak. Roland's an expert. If you have any questions about Queensland, anything that's on your mind, do it now while Roland's here, because what will happen, these guys, you've seen what the workshops are like. We've got a workshop tomorrow. It'll be a full workshop.
Same stock list is going out.
Same stock. This stock list is going to the guys at the workshop tomorrow. So it's, right now you've got the pick of the crop. And that's just, so that's to your advantage. And that's because you're current clients. So, any questions in regards to Queensland? I know it's Queensland, but what do you do, right? Queensland. Highest cancer rate, I think.
So, we appreciate your time, guys, for coming. As Steve said, we're here to answer any questions. I just want to let you know that we are running those mentoring programs, webinars on a monthly basis, okay? But we do require you to send some questions or things through so we can answer those questions. Because that's one way that Steve and I can communicate with everyone, is to be able to answer questions that you have, you know. I know Steve here has sent me questions through at different times and contacted me and we've answered all his questions, yeah?
We were running them every month, but then what happened, because Christmas time came into play and now we've fallen in a round of workshops.
So next one will be March. We haven't got the date, but we'll work it out in March.
Mid to the end of March. We'll lock in a date. But please send questions in. The questions are important because if you're thinking them, probably other people are thinking them as well. Instead of just coming from us and then we structure it, you think, oh, well, I really want to know about this or that. If you get questions.
Also, guys, we're going to be taking a little bit more of a proactive approach now, Steve and I, because what we've found is that we've gone through and we've spoken to Yola and a couple of other customer relationship managers that we've had, and we've